All right, good evening and welcome to the 2022 Sunset High School Math Department Showcase. I feel like the word showcase, I feel like there should be more song and dancing involved with it, which there will be a little bit of that, but probably not as much as you would think. Thank you everyone for being here tonight on this Monday evening. I want to thank all the parents and students that are joining us, as well as my fellow math teachers, Kristen Bertie, Brian Ford, and Montana McNeely. They're going to be helping out with a lot. Also, Denise Williams is on her way. She's running a few minutes behind. I am sharing my screen with you guys right now. I hope everybody can see these slides. Just a quick overview of everything that's going to happen tonight. First, I'm going to welcome you guys. So welcome everyone for being here. We're also going to show a quick math department video that was kind of a fun thing we threw together this year and last year to kind of highlight people meeting us in person. Then we're going to go over like a very large overview of all the possible course sequencing at Sunset High School. You know, the pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, we used to do this on a curriculum night at Sunset High School, where every department would have a table in the cafeteria, and then there would just be lines of parents asking us tons of questions. So that was a little bit more of like a one-on-one experience, but last year with the pandemic, we shifted to this more sort of group sharing activity, which is good because everyone gets to hear the answers to our questions. Speaking of questions, if any questions arise at any point, feel free to throw those in the chat, and I will try to monitor those and explain and answer certain questions. But as my coworkers as well will be trying to handle some of those in the chat, and I thank them for that. After we've gone through a bunch of the possibilities for course sequencing, you know, different math courses you can take here at Sunset, we are going to do a breakout Q&A. The way that will work is that if you have a question about possibly like AGS or pre-calculus or anything like that, you can totally hang out in this Zoom. But if you have a specific question about IB, the International Baccalaureate Program, or if you have a dual credit, like a DC question, we're going to have a separate Zoom for that. And there will be a link in the chat after I'm done with the presentation. So if you have like an IB dual credit question, you're going to mosey on over to that Zoom after we're done with the whole presentation. Denise Williams and Kristen Bertie, who are experts in both IB and DC, will be fielding those questions. Okay, real quick, I'm going to have to stop sharing this and then start sharing a different screen so you guys can see our video. The sound button is on. So here is our Meet the Math Department video for anybody who doesn't know us. Hey, I'm Mr. Jolly, and I'm here with the Sunset Math Department to talk about what makes a good math learner. I think a good math learner is okay with being uncomfortable sometimes, but the most important thing is never give up.
Being a good math learner means finding many different paths to a solution.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Bertie. A good math learner does a little bit of math every day. Don't leave it till the night before the test.
Hey Apollos, I'm Mr. Ford. I think that being consistent and being persistent is what makes you a good math learner.
Hey, I'm Miss McNamee. I think that a great math student possesses curiosity and the willingness to explore.
My name is Ms. McNamee. I'm Mr. Niway, and I am here to tell you that to be successful in math, just talk through your problems. Talk them out. We talk about our personal problems with friends, so why not talk about our math problems too? It'll make more sense, I'm sure.
Hey, I'm Mr. Buck. And I think math is important because we're teaching you high-level problem solving. I know this is going to really disappoint a lot of people, but most of you will probably never factor another quadratic for the rest of your life. But that's okay, because the critical thinking skills you employed when you learned to factor those quadratics, and then as we made it more complex, we made your thinking more complex, you're going to use those skills every day for the rest of your life. What do you think?
Hey Sunset, I'm Miss McNeely, and I think being a good math learner means knowing when to ask for help.
Hello Apollos, I'm Denise Williams. And good mathematical learners know how to make mistakes and yet learn from them.
Hi, I'm Miss Rader. To be a good math learner is to be an Apollo. Go Apollos!
All right. I apologize if that's not the most professional thing you've ever seen. I'm not a bona fide video editor, but you know what? I did my best. One thing I realized in lots of areas of education is that a lot of teachers and educators really just rely on a lot of acronyms that they assume that people know. Here's all the acronyms that are going to be coming at you guys tonight. Anytime we say AGS, that stands for Algebra, Geometry, Statistics, which is kind of an amalgamation of those three topics each year. It's not all one thing in one year. There's usually there's a mix each year. IB stands for the International Baccalaureate. We have a big IB program at Sunset. DC is our dual credit at Portland State University program. So students receive credit at Portland State for any DC class. Anytime I talk about IB classes, we might also talk about SL IB classes or HL IB classes, which just stand for standard level or higher level. So if we were in person doing this meeting, or this curriculum night at Sunset, we would have lots of copies of this and hand this to parents and students to talk about all the different pathways through the Sunset math sequence. I think the problem with a lot of this is that sometimes it can be very convoluted. I think even teachers at Sunset get slightly confused about what all the options are, all the different paths that exist in this. So rather than just throw this giant diagram at you guys and say, okay, well, just figure it out, it's all right there. I'm going to take us through a few slides that kind of zoom in on different pathways that depend on where you start in the program. I know that everybody, when they come to Sunset High School, not everybody starts in AGS 1 their freshman year. Not everybody starts with AGS 2. Lots of people come in at AGS 3, accelerated AGS 3, pre-calculus even. So I'm going to show what 4 years of math at Sunset can look like depending on where you start. So this first slide, well, all of these slides that you're going to see, I tried to break up the columns into each year that you're taking math at Sunset. I realize that students only are required to take 3 years of math at Sunset, but we always encourage students to take 4 years of math if they're thinking about going to college. There's usually some sort of math requirement there, so we like to keep them to keep in practice. So this slide is if a student started their freshman year in AGS 1. There's really only one class after AGS 1, and their sophomore year, they would be taking AGS 2. After AGS 2, this is one of the first time that there's sort of a decision to be made. There's a split between classes you can go to. Depending on if students are liking and really are super successful with their AGS 2 experience, they might go to accelerated AGS 3 if they're really feeling like they want to, that math is one of their favorite subjects. And for a lot of other students that, did fine in AGS 2, but maybe math isn't their favorite topic, we can go to regular AGS 3. Those curriculums are very similar, but the accelerated class, as it says within the name, it goes faster and it covers some topics that aren't covered in regular AGS 3. From regular AGS 3, we have sort of a new pathway this year to get to IB applications, or IB applications 2, as it's sometimes called. In previous years at Sunset, for a student starting their freshman year in AGS 1, there wasn't a clear path to getting to an IB exam their senior year without doing summer coursework. So we decided that enough material in AGS 3 is covered and will prepare them for that second year IB applications course. So this is kind of a new one for us that I'm going to be talking about throughout the evening. Our AGS topics class is for students that really enjoy a lot of real world math topics, but maybe aren't math is definitely not their favorite class. The Analysis 1 course is what I kind of like to call pre-calculus light. It's a lot of pre-calc topics, but it doesn't necessarily go as fast and as deep and cover as much as our regular pre-calc course. So on that final column there, sort of from top to bottom, you can see as you move through the ladder, the rigor will increase, and it's for students that love mathematics more as you go down the ladder. And if questions come up, feel free to throw them in the chat, and I can try to verbally respond, or I can have other teachers try to talk you through them. This next slide is for a student that would start their freshman year in AGS 2. So their sophomore year, they're going to have that split again between AGS 3 and accelerated AGS 3. And then their junior year, if you were in a regular AGS 3 course, you could either take the IB applications course, which once again is a second year IB course that you could take an IB exam in, because that's their junior year there with the third column. And for that course, you could take an IB exam in your junior year. If they choose the Analysis 1 course, once again, that's like the pre-calc light course that really opens up a door towards like 3 or 4 different other options their senior year. If you took accelerated AGS 3, usually the path is towards pre-calculus if students were really super successful in accelerated AGS 3 and are wanting to kind of go a lot deeper with very pure math concepts, a lot of algebra, graphing, and things like that. From Analysis 1, there's 3 different courses you could take. And I should say that there are certain paths here that are not highlighted that are sort of unusual ones. I tried to make these sort of the typical experiences that students would have here at Sunset. So, meaning that if you do fairly well in each of these courses, these are the next courses that would make sense to take. Hi, Denise. If they started their freshman year in AGS 2, they're by their senior year, they could be taking AGS topics, which once again is kind of that a lot of real world applications. They could be taking DC stats, which is a dual credit course. They get PSU credit for it. It's a lot of statistics. Our stats teacher, Ms. Berti, is here tonight, so she can definitely talk at length about that course. You could be taking IB applications too, which is a lot of applied math. It's a lot of calculator concepts, but it is an IB course that's rigorous, just like all our other IB courses. And then IB Analysis 2, this is the first time we've seen this orange block on the board tonight. IB Analysis 2 is what I like to call calculus light. It has a lot of calculus concepts in it, but it doesn't go as fast or as deep as our DC Calc program. Which path will go to the full IB program? There's a lot of paths to access our IB program because we have 3 different second year IB courses at Sunset. There's the IB applications course, the IB analysis course, and then the IB analysis HL course. From pre-calculus, a student could certainly access the dual credit calculus course. So that's the DC course that they get PSU credit for. Oh, one thing that I have a note I wanted to remind myself of about that DC, both of our DC courses is that freshmen are not going to be getting PSU credit for taking a DC course. So yeah, that being said, like any freshmen coming in, we're going to steer them away from doing a DC course their freshman year because PSU will not give freshmen credit for a DC course. I see a question in the chat about offering AGS 2 or AGS 3 in the summer. I will say that yes, traditionally we have offered those courses in the summer, and I think it's similar this year. Although I know that some other teachers here might have slightly more information about our summer programs. These dual credit stats course, I'm responding to this question, is the statistics DC course an AP or not? It is not an AP stats course. It is just a dual credit PSU course. This next slide is if a student started their freshman year in AGS 3. Typically from AGS 3, we have students funnel into IB Analysis 1. Now, IB Analysis 1 is a year 1 IB course, but it thoroughly prepares students for either the Applications 2 course or the Analysis 2 course. So their junior year, they could be taking either of those courses. Then from Applications, the most logical senior level course would probably be the DC Stats course. But if they took IB Analysis 2, certainly the DC Stats course would still be on their table their senior year, or the dual credit calculus. I actually really love this pathway through Sunset because it starts in AGS 3. It's very accessible. They get that an IB Analysis 2 their junior year, which I think of as like Calculus Light. And then we've been told that students in the dual credit calculus program their senior year that come from the IB Analysis 2 course are traditionally very successful with the course. So I like this because you get calculus credit senior year, and you get a very wide breadth of IB, DC, and AGS. Sorry, I see a raised hand. I will remind you guys that afterwards, after I've gone through all this, we are going to have plenty of time for questions, both in the chat and in this Zoom and in the breakout Zoom, where all questions about IB and DC will be focused on. This next slide is if a student started their freshman year and accelerated AGS 3. There's a lot of pathways through this. I realize that this one is maybe not quite split up into like the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, because there's this path from IB Analysis 2 up to DC Calc 1. But there's a lot of different ways to go through this. So if you start with accelerated AGS 3, logical choices after that, your sophomore year would definitely either be pre-calc, if you're doing very well in accelerated AGS 3, or taking IB Analysis 1, which is like the pre-calc light course. From IB Analysis 1, you could certainly take IB Analysis 2, and then from there, you could either take dual credit calculus, which we talked about in the previous slide, or you could take dual credit stats afterwards. If you're going along this top route from accelerated AGS 3 into pre-calc sophomore year, then DC Calc 1 your junior year, we do have a second year calc course that students could be taking their senior year. It mostly aligns with Math 253, I believe. I think that dual credit calculus 1 is similar to PSU's 251 and 252, but the dual credit calc 3 is like a 253 course. Excuse me. If a student starts pre-calculus in their freshman year, these are all the pathways that are available to them. It's kind of a funny one because you almost start running out of math classes at Sunset at a certain point. So usually there's like a DC stats that's thrown in there somewhere in the mix. That's kind of like if you you can't take an IB class till your junior or senior year, you might take like a DC stats your second or sophomore year. But typically from pre-calculus, students can go to DC Calc 1 or IB Analysis 2. Then from there, they could go to dual credit Calculus 3. So that's like the second year calc course. And then their senior year, they could certainly take statistics. If we go on the lower path here, not lower, but just the southern path, from pre-calculus, you could go into IB Analysis 2, and then you could take dual credit Calc 1 your junior year, and then senior year, you could take dual credit Calc 3, that second year calc course. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat a little bit. Thank you so much to everyone that's helping respond to these questions. We will have a time for audio questions at the end of this. One of the questions that I've talked about a lot during my years doing the curriculum night at Sunset is how students have access to the IB Math HL class here at Sunset. So I'm going to talk about two different ways that you can get to this class your senior year. The first one is if you start your freshman year in accelerated AGS 3, sophomore year, you would take pre-calculus. Junior year, you would take that Calc 1 course, which is also dual titled as IB Math HL1. This can be slightly confusing because all the slides up until now have just said DC Calculus 1. But please know that any student that takes DC Calculus 1 also has the option to have that say IB Math HL on their transcript. It's because at HL1 covers, DC Calculus 1 covers a variety of topics that are also included in IB Math HL1. So junior year, they could take IB Math HL1, and then senior year, they would take our IB Math HL2. The other route to that course is starting in pre-calculus your freshman year. Then sophomore year, you would take Calc 1, DC Calc 1, and then junior year, you could either take the DC Calc 3 or dual credit statistics, would be totally fine, and then jump back into IB Math HL2 senior year. I also have a PDF of this whole presentation that I am going to be getting Sean Davitt to add to our digital curriculum, or to our program guide, I meant to say, that's on the Sunset website, because I know these are helpful and I don't want to keep them all to myself. So I'll post them for everyone's benefit. So I realize that people probably have questions. I'm just catching up in the chat a little bit. I want to reiterate that if you have a general AGS questions, so questions about our sequence through the AGS or pre-calculus, or really anything that doesn't have to do with IB or dual credit, you can stay in this Zoom, and we will wrap up at probably about 7:15, because I want to make sure that people have enough time to get to the next session that's tonight. If you have questions about IB or dual credit calculus, I'm going to get Denise Williams to throw a link to an external Zoom in the chat, and then people can funnel their way over there. We'll take a few minutes so everybody can get settled. Thank you, Denise, for posting that in the chat. Also, thank you, Denise, for recording your session tonight like I did. Oh, yeah, that's a good point I wanted to say. I'm recording everything right now. These will be posted later on. I think Chris Pick's going to be sending out links to all these. All right, if you have an IB or a DC question, feel free to head over to that other Zoom with Denise Williams and Kristen Berti. Otherwise, hang out here and I can do my best to answer any questions that you guys have. Yes, I do see a raised hand. Feel free to unmute and go ahead and talk to me. If you still have a question, maybe your question got answered earlier in the chat.
Where did that go? I need to leave this meeting.
Bye, Denise. So I see a question in the chat that says, if they're in AGS 1 in 8th grade, do they automatically go to AGS 2 in 9th grade? Yes, that's one of the few times where there's not really a choice between levels. Like AGS 1, if they're successful with it, definitely AGS 2, their 9th grade year. Also, if there's any of those slides that anybody wants to see again, I can gladly scroll back to those and zoom in on part of it to show you guys any of the pathways. Actually, here, maybe we'll go back to just our general pathway here. I got a direct message that somebody said they joined a bit late and wanted to know if there was anything important in the beginning. Really, in the beginning, I just said that this diagram is kind of convoluted. So yeah, that I went through a bunch of different possible scenarios for students starting at different points in our sequence. All right, I'll do my best to start answering some of these questions. Someone asked, will there be a qualification test to choose AGS 3 accelerated? AGS 3 accelerated is usually a recommendation from their AGS 2 teacher. So each student will be meeting with their math teacher, and their math teacher will be telling them which math class that they think they should forecast for next year. There's not exactly like a grade cutoff or anything for accelerated AGS 3. But once again, it's for students that are very successful in AGS 2 and are really enjoying their math experience at Sunset. Someone asked, do you recommend taking accelerated AGS 3 in the summer? I think that really depends on what the goal is. I always kind of ask parents and students like what class they want to get to by their senior year. I don't think depending on the age of the student, that taking accelerated AGS 3 over the summer is absolutely necessary, but it can really depend on what class the students want to end up in. If a student is like, no, I want to be an HL by my senior year, then sometimes, yes, accelerated AGS 3 in the summer completely makes sense. But if the goal is just to see some calculus before you go off to college, I always kind of steer students towards either doing our DC Calc program or IB SL2 analysis. Someone said, if you are in AGS 1 8th grade and you do AGS 2 over the summer, do you go to AGS 3 freshman year? Yes, you would definitely go to AGS 3 or accelerated AGS 3 your freshman year, depending on how that summer session of AGS 2 went.
I was going to say, Garrett, or Mr. Trolley, do you mind if I chime in for a second? It seems like a lot of the questions are kind of asking how do we figure out kind of where we're going the next year. And a lot of it has to do based upon student success and student readiness for the next course. So whether that be during the school year or over the summer, either way, the teacher is likely to recommend what your next course is based upon the student success in the current course. So if you do really well in AGS 2, then it's likely that they would be recommending you for accelerated AGS 3. If you do well in AGS 1, then they'll recommend you for AGS 2. So no matter kind of where you're at in the sequence, if you do well and you pass the course and you're prepared for the next level, that's what your teacher will kind of recommend you for. There's not a placement test that will determine that. It's kind of just solely based upon how you did in the previous course. So there's not a letter of recommendation needed or a placement test needed, but more so just the previous course completion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, feel free to jump in at any point. I certainly don't have to hog all the questions, so I appreciate that input. I did see a direct message that said, can you give me more insight into applications versus analysis? I can, because I've taught both of those IB courses. Applications is going to be more focused on applied math, like the name. And it's going to be more focused on graphing calculators. It's a lot less of using an algebraic formula. It's more of using the tool of the calculator to be able to get to certain things. Analysis is a little more focused on kind of pure mathematics. It's a little more, it lives in the algebra land. It focuses a lot on functions and graphing and doing things by hand, as opposed to the applications course, which is a lot more stats based, probability focused, and it involves a lot more calculator use. Sorry, I'm catching up on all the messages. Also, if your question got lost in the chat earlier, feel free to unmute and ask it, or you can throw it back in the chat again, and we'll definitely try to get it to it in the next 15 minutes. Yes, this slide deck will be available on the program guide on the Sunset website. It's not currently up there, but I will email it tomorrow to Sean Davitt, and he will throw it up there for us because it's a living document that we can edit, which is great. I got a direct message that said, if a freshman is struggling in AGS 2, will there be extra help? One of the biggest ways for kids to get help at Sunset is to take advantage of our AT program. That's our 8th period class, where students are allowed to get signatures from teachers and then go to work with that teacher one-on-one during that period. If a student is struggling in AGS 2, I would highly recommend that they just go work one-on-one with that teacher. I got a direct message from a student that says, if I'm in math in 8th grade, so like math 8, do I need to take a test or something for next year? Once again, that's definitely your teacher will help advise you as to what class you'll take next year. But I think as long as you're successful in a math 8, I think AGS 1 would be where you'll land your freshman year. I got another direct message that says, if I'm an AGS1 in my 8th grade year and am successful in AGS2 during a summer school, will I be able to take AGS3? Yes, absolutely. If you do great with AGS1 your 8th grade year and take AGS2 over the summer, then AGS3 is where you'll land your freshman year. Oh, I got another interesting direct message that said, what percentage of 8th grade AGS1 students start 9th grade in AGS2? Is it 50-50 or 80-20? That's a great question. And I think it might be a question more for middle school teachers, because I've never seen that process of what it's like to forecast 8th graders into AGS1 their freshman year. So I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you. I see another message that says, can students take pre-calculus in the summer and start with calculus in 9th grade, already taking accelerated AGS3 in 8th grade? Are there courses around here online that BSD will help accept as high school credit? Once again, with questions like that, I always ask that what the goal is, like what class the student is trying to get to. I don't know of many pre-calculus summer programs. I have heard counselors talk about BYU being an option for online classes that we accept at Sunset High School. But I don't necessarily know if accelerating that fast is the answer. I always start with like what class you're trying to get to, because I think if you're coming into pre-calculus your freshman year, every single class we have at Sunset is still on the table for that student. Nothing is out of their reach. They can take IB HL2 their senior year. So yeah, just to reiterate, math teachers will advise students on what class they should take next year. And it's all dependent on how successful a student is with a particular course. So all math teachers will meet with their students one-on-one to tell them what class they should take. I see another question that says, how bad would you have to do an AGS2 over the summer to not be able to do AGS3 in 9th grade? I think as long as like you're proficient in most learning topics, that you'll be able to take AGS3 your freshman year. Another direct message that says, can I take AGS1 during the summer? Do you know the answer to that, Montana?
Typically in years past, we have not offered an AGS1 over the summer, just solely because it's such a fundamental math skills, is that they really don't want to condense that down into 8 quick weeks, because there are just so many topics in there that are fundamental to the math learning process. So not typically.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Dolly, this would be a good question maybe for you. There's one that's what are the pros and cons versus going the pre-calculus route versus the IB analysis applications route? Do you want to maybe tackle that one?
Pre-calc versus IB applications? Oh,
so just in general, pre-calc and calculus versus kind of the IB route.
In general, the pre-calculus branch is going to be a lot more rigorous, that they're going to probably go like further and faster with a lot of pre-calc concepts, as opposed to like the analysis 1 and then moving into applications the second year, or analysis 2 the second year. It's going to be IB style, which IB style can mean it's very like kind of open learning. It's not necessarily as much like, here's a formula, here's 10 problems that you do with that formula. They do use formulas and practice them and things, but I think that IB tries to take a very holistic approach to a lot of topics. There's going to be similar things in pre-calculus and in analysis, but in general, IB analysis SL1 tends to take their time a little bit more and maybe go a little bit deeper with some of those topics, as opposed to pre-calc, which goes faster. Do you think I answered their question, Montana? Another direct message about being in Math 8, their 8th grade year, and whether or not they need to do anything to get enrolled to AGS 1. I think you'll automatically be enrolled in AGS 1 as long as you're passing Math 8 your 8th grade year. Another direct message about where can people sign up for the summer sessions. Do you know the answer to that, Montana?
Yes, so all the summer information will be done directly through the BSD website. As of right now, the summer school has not been finalized, and it typically does not become available until late spring. So I would expect probably late March, early to mid-April for that information to become available. And again, it would be directly through the BSD website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. See another question about if somebody's seeing it correctly, that only AGS 1 and AGS 2 are required for graduation. No, that's not completely correct. I think for graduation at Sunset, you need 3 years of math credits, at least 3. We recommend that students take 4 years of math, but typically at least 3 credits of math to graduate, and making it through the AGS 1, AGS 2, AGS 3 sequence is, I think that's what that's saying. They also asked, are there exceptions for someone on an IEP with math learning disability? Yeah, we work with students with IEPs all the time, and we usually have very specific accommodations for those students about, certain things that we can do to, extend tests, break them up. I realize accommodations are different for every student. But yes, we follow accommodations very seriously at Sunset to help make sure students pass whatever course they're taking. But as far as graduation requirements, I don't think an IEP changes the graduation requirements. It just gives the student more tools to be able to pass those 3 years of math. Another direct message that says, if you take pre-calculus, can you take IB-SL1 analysis? You could, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense in the progression because, the IB-SL1 analysis is like the pre-calc light course. So really, after you complete pre-calc, it would almost be like a slight step backwards to take IB analysis SL1. You would be very bored. It's a lot of the same topics. What percentage of students obtain an IB diploma? That's an amazing question, and I do not know the answer. I do know we do have another IB session happening sometime this week and next week where you could go to that Zoom and certainly talk to Miss Boshenstein about that question. She's our IB math person, or IB person in general.
Mr. Jolly, someone's asking where could they get this information after this is over?
Yes, this entire slideshow with like all these different pathways is going to be on our academic program guide, which you can find on the Sunset website. It's not currently linked right now, but I will send it to Sean Davitt, our vice principal, tomorrow morning, and we'll get it up there for you guys. Another person asked, what's the pros and cons about going the pre-calc calculus route versus the analysis application route? They both have pros and cons. I think that the DC route is almost guaranteed college credit at some point, as opposed to the analysis applications route, where if a student does well enough on an IB exam, they usually get some sort of college credit, but it's different. It can depend. What credit you get depends on the university. So we usually tell students to check with the university about what kind of credit they get for passing an IB applications exam or an IB analysis exam. But both very good paths, in my opinion. Another person said that asked if they would be able to email anyone for questions after this is over. Yes, you can definitely email me My name is Garrett Jolly, and I will throw my email in the chat. I'm also seeing a couple different questions about just the forecasting process. A lot of that will be done in students. Well, I'm not sure what it looks like at the middle school level, but at least at Sunset, all the forecasting information will be coming out during AT with their 8th period class. And we'll be giving all the resources and talking about the process with our students in that period. Sorry, I'm just catching up in the chat. I lost my place.
Yeah, I tried to answer most of the questions, but if I did miss any, feel free to repost in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys so much for helping with questions in the chat. Someone asked if IEPs carry on throughout all of high school. Yes, they can. I think that they are reevaluated every year, though. So there's lots of meetings to change accommodations and things like that and make sure the IEP is working for the student. But certainly a student could have an IEP throughout all 4 years of high school. I don't believe 504s and IEPs go with students through college. I have never taught college, but I have been told by other teachers that it's there is some like a similar process for getting on an IEP in college, but it does not necessarily carry over.
Mr. Jolly, would you mind scrolling back to freshmen starting in AGS 2?
I do not.
And the different pathways. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I just saw a DM about that, so I'm glad we're there. Yeah, so if you take AGS 2 your freshman year, sophomore year, you'll either take accelerated AGS 3 or regular AGS 3. And then junior year, you could jump into some sort of IB course, either from the accelerated or the regular AGS 3. Or if you went the accelerated 3 route, you could take pre-calculus your junior year. And then there's just a whole lot of options for senior year. Montana, this might be a question for you. I got a DM that says, if I'm getting B's in AGS 2, should I try to do accelerated AGS 3?
B's?
Yes.
And that's as an 8th grader, correct?
I believe they didn't state.
I guess at that point, it kind of depends on like how are you feeling about those B's? Are those B's happening? It's accelerated. So I've taught accelerated for the last 4 years, accelerated AGS 3. And really the difference maker for kids in accelerated AGS 3 is how hard they're willing to work. So students that kind of aren't super motivated to do homework or to kind of study that extra bit, those are the kids that struggle in accelerated AGS 3 versus the kids that are willing to kind of put in the extra time to be sure they do their homework and are willing to dedicate to studying. Those are the kids that are often more successful in AGS 3. So I guess it's a personal question of kind of why you have those B's. Is it because AGS 2 material is really tough for you, or is it because you're not maybe putting in the work that you should be?
And also, once again, like, what is the goal? Like, do you want to get to a certain class by senior year? And does it taking a regular AGS 3 your freshman year take that off the table for you? Or is there still a path to get to a lot of like different courses that you want to take? So it really depends on what you want. So I got a DM that said, if you start in AGS 2 and you can tell in the first few weeks it is too difficult, can you switch to AGS 1? Usually counselors encourage students to switch within the first week. I think after 2 weeks, it's a little harder to get out of a course. So really within the first week, which I know it's hard to tell in the first week, but yeah, I would mostly go off of your experience in AGS 1. Like if you were liking math and feeling successful and, doing homework and keeping up with the course, then AGS 2 will probably go fine. Arthur, I am a 9th grade math teacher right now. I'm teaching AGS 1 currently. I teach 3 courses right now, but one of them does have a lot of 9th grade teachers. 9th grade students. Somebody said, is AGS 1 at Tumwater the same as the AGS 1 at Sunset? I don't know exactly, but I would wager that it's very similar experiences. I think most AGS 1 courses use all the same learning targets and a lot of the same materials. So I would guess that it's a very similar experience. Oh, thank you for answering that question, Montana.
Mr. Jolly, can you show the AGS 3 slide as a freshman? Looks like there's another question.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the most advanced class would be that DC Calc 1, which is it's college credit calculus. It's definitely, it's a great course.
I was gonna say, there's a good question in here, Mr. Jolly, that maybe you might be able to answer. If you end up going the IB route, when you go to college, kind of what's your first math college class after taking the IB route?
That's an amazing question. It would depend on which IB class they completed in high school. So there's kind of 3 different levels of IB courses. There's IB applications, which I'm not going to say is the bottom, but it's definitely not quite as rigorous as like the HL course, for instance. So there's applications, there's analysis, and then there's analysis HL. If you took analysis HL, I believe you're prepared for kind of a 2nd year calculus course your freshman year. If you took analysis, IB analysis SL, your senior year, you would probably want to take a calculus 1st year course your freshman year. And then if you took the IB applications course, your freshman year, you'd probably want to go into Math 111, 112, which is similar to a pre-calc course. Somebody else asked me to go back to if you start in AGS 1 freshman year. And once again, we're going to get these slides up on the program guide on the Sunset High School website. Oh, somebody said for the DC courses, are they only counted as credits at PSU or are they accepted at other universities too? I think as long as the credits transfer from PSU, that there's definitely other universities that accept the credit as well. No problem. So I believe there is one more session happening tonight at 7:30 for another department. So I do want to give parents and students enough time to move over and get comfortable at the next Zoom. So maybe if we have time for 1 or 2 more questions before we get out of here. Oh, Arthur, no, you can't go from IB applications to dual credit calculus 1. That's not one of the pathways that we have. If you had time, you would have to take either probably a pre-calc course in between. It'd be kind of a funny path, but you could do it. All right, everyone. I thank you all for being here. Yeah, this is being recorded, so we'll upload it. I think Chris Pick is going to be sending it out to families. Thank you so much, Ms. McNeely and Mr. Ford, for helping out in the chat tonight and with all the questions. You guys are amazing. There is one more showcase, math department showcase next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. If you want to have any other lingering questions, you're certainly free to come back to that one. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.